Is this thing on? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Welcome to today's edition of the Movies TV Mad Daily. We're going to discuss the breaking news that the Blade movie has been cancelled and taken off the scheduling list at Marvel Studios. If you're basically a pundit out there or a nerd out there, this isn't big news to you. You knew this was coming. It doesn't make you clever. We're gonna get into this. But also, I want to talk about my new James Gunn Superman theory. I've been thinking for such a long time he's going to do the unthinkable and kill off Superman. But what if he's going to kill Rachel Brosnahan's Lois Lane off? Very interesting. We will get to my new Superman theory. But first of all, the main headline today is that the Blade movie starring Mahershala Ali has been cancelled at Marvel Studios. Marvel Studios is in the business of dumbed down entertainment. Mahershala Ali is the Black Henry Cavill. Like Cavill just doesn't want to come into a production and just say his lines and go home. He wants the entertainment to be great. He wants you, the viewer, to enjoy what he's doing and what they're making. This is why he ends up being fired from a lot of his projects, because he's a pain in the arse, because he wants it to be great. And Mahershala Ali is the same. He gave Kevin Feige the best directors. He suggested great directors, they took them on. He gave them the best writers, right? Because he wanted the thing to be great. He wanted a deep, epic Blade movie with great, fighting choreography, like the original Wesley Snipes movie. And in the end, it didn't come together. It didn't fit the dumbed down Marvel Studios aesthetic. And there lies the problem. And if you follow me on Twitter, I predicted this for a very long time. I said Mahershala Ali would walk. I'm surprised he hasn't walked up till now. Maybe, privately and secretly, Mahershala Ali has walked away, and that's why this Blade movie has actually been cancelled. That wouldn't actually surprise me if that's the thing. So it has been cancelled. I don't know if it will be back on the schedule. I don't think so. So this is what I think is going to happen next, because there's so many angry Blade fans. So what are they going to do? Well, recently we saw Wesley Snipes reprise his role as Blade in Deadpool and Wolverine. Ryan Reynolds even saying on social media that he thinks he should come back as Blade. Probably not really that respectful towards Mahershala Ali, but, it's show business, not show friends. So I think Kevin Feige is going to bring back Wesley Snipes as Blade. Not necessarily in a movie, first of all, but in certain cameos in certain movies. I think this is the direction they're going to go in. If they give you Wesley Snipes back as Blade, you're going to start feeling the nostalgia. You're not going to be so angry that you're not getting this Blade movie. This is typical Feige. This is typical Marvel Studios. That wouldn't surprise me one little bit. But no one is shocked and surprised at this movie's cancellation, because we live in an era of entertainment, not just inside the industry, but outside the industry, where dumbed down, samey entertainment is embraced. Look at how audiences have rejected Joker Folie and Dois. The people keep on telling me it's crap, it deserves its D cinema score. I couldn't agree effing less. It's a great, cultured musical movie that continues to examine the character of Arthur Fleck. But because it's different, because it's something you're not used to, you rejected it. Joker Folie and Dois is not a bad movie. But it's the same discussions we had during the Snyderverse. The Snyderverse was deemed bad. The Snyderverse was deemed bad superhero movies. No, not at all. For some of us, they were great. And for some people, you didn't appreciate them because they were made in a different way. They were very contemporary superhero movies in terms of Man of Steel and BVS. And many members of the general audience rejected them because they happened to be different, because they weren't dumbed down entertainment. But to be fair to Zack Snyder, Man of Steel made nearly 700 million, and Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice made near on shy of 900 million. Not the money the studio wanted, but still good money at the end of the day. But some fools will call those movies flops. Not for me. Not in the real world. They're not flops. They just didn't make the money the studio wanted them to make. But as I say, we live in an era of audiences, and audiences and studios that want dumbed down entertainment. Because Warner Brothers right now will be looking at the reaction to Joker Folie and go, well, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to give the audience anything different. We're not going to challenge the audience anymore. We're not going to give them any depth, because every time we do, they reject it. Every time we give the audience something deep and different, they reject it. It's not an era of entertainment where something deep and contemporary and different is appreciated. And this is what scared Kevin Feige about the direction they were going in with the Blade movie. Mahershala Ali wanted something deep, something different, but they knew what would happen if that's what they got. It's like Eternals. Eternals was a very different type of movie that people called boring. Eternals actually isn't a boring movie. I saw it. I thought it was an interesting movie, but it was different. It was differently made. And it was made by an independent director as well, with that independent indie movie aesthetic. And again, that movie was rejected. And herein lies the problem. So the more audiences reject contemporary, interesting, cultured movies, the more dumbed down shit we're going to get. One of the things I did like about Deadpool and Wolverine, there was quite little action in the movie, and there was more characterizations, there was more character development, there was more emotional moments. And I got a like on X-Twitter from the director of Deadpool and Wolverine for saying, well done. Well done, because it's good for young audiences to see characters just talking. Because too much today by critics and the public we get, oh, there's pacing issues. People call people having conversations in television and movies pacing issues. They're not pacing issues, it's people talking. That isn't pacing issues. That should be interesting. And the conversations between Deadpool and Wolverine in that movie were interesting. They're not pacing issues. There was a very mixed response to Deadpool and Wolverine, although it did great box office by critics. Audiences loved it, and critics were kind of mixed on it. Again, they were calling out pacing issues. Talking in movies and television, in stories, isn't pacing fucking issues, you fucking idiots. So that's your headline for today. That's my response to that headline. The Blade has been cancelled at Marvel Studios. I think it's a shame. I think Mahershala Ali and his ideas were brilliant, and I think he wanted to give us an epic, brilliant, emotional Blade movie. But as I say, Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios are in the business of dumbed down entertainment. And the Marvel Studio fans, the MCU fans, are also in the business of dumbed down entertainment. And it's very interesting as we move over to James Gunn and Superman in my conversation and theory about Lois Lane. A lot of people think that James Gunn's DCU and Superman is going to be dumbed down entertainment. But if you go and watch Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, you'll see that James Gunn isn't really in the business of dumbed down entertainment. You go and watch The Suicide Squad. What's the commentary in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad? Animal cruelty. He loves animals. So Starro's been experimented on, abused, and in the end he kills his abuser in Peter Capaldi, right? So Gunn does do deep stuff, and I think people are going to see a deeper Superman film, maybe a slightly more controversial Superman film than they're expecting from James Gunn. As you all know, if you're regular viewers to this channel and my platforms, I've had a theory that Gunn will kill off Superman in this movie. Now, I was just having a cigarette, terrible habit, but I do it. It keeps the stress levels down. life's challenging, give me a break, give me a break. Anyway, so I'm having a cigarette, cup of tea, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute. I was thinking about Rachel Brosnahan and how I want to binge the fabulous Mrs. Maisel because I really want to see what she's like. I haven't seen her in very much. And it's interesting, actually, because Amy Adams was being interviewed and wonderfully talked about Henry Cavill, great Superman. She goes, blah, 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 yeah, I always wish the next Superman the best of luck. Because Amy grew up on the Superman movies. She loved Margot Kidder. She explained how she used to pretend to be Lois Lane because she was inspired by Margot's performance. Stuff that I haven't heard Amy say before, actually. But she said Henry's very similar to Clark Kent and Superman. He has that personality. He's a good guy. It was so lovely, and she said, I have to say this before we go on, because you're asking me about me and Lois Lane, but I have to say this about Henry Cavill, because everyone who was part of the Snyderverse loved Henry as Superman and very angry the way he was treated. Henry Cavill, let's all say it together before we move on. Henry Cavill was done dirty as Superman because of the same reasons as Mahershala Ali, because he has creative integrity. Unlike most actors today who just want to simp and talk politics and talk BS, right? Henry cares and Mahershala Ali cares about Blade, and Henry cares about the Highlander character he's going to be playing, cares about Superman, cares about that computer game character he's going to play on Amazon Prime. He cares. So it was great of Amy to talk about that. And so, I've seen clips of Rachel Brosnahan in the fabulous Mrs. Maisel. She is Lois Lane in a lot of ways. What's interesting about Snyderverse's Lois Lane is everyone keeps on saying the Snyderverse isn't comic book accurate, but Lois Lane had red hair, like in the comics. Now it looks like James Gunn's Rachel Brosnahan Lois Lane is going to have darker hair, which is Rachel's hair colour, I think. So that's interesting. I haven't seen her going around on the location shoot in red hair, so they're going to go with the Margot Kidder kind of hair. That's interesting because they're choosing Superman 78's aesthetic in a lot of ways. We're getting an Otis, we're getting a Miss Tessmacher. It's all very, very interesting. But what if I'm wrong about Superman being killed off? And what if it's actually Lois Lane that dies in this movie? If you remember back to Superman 78, Superman the movie, Superman 1, whatever you know it as, Lois Lane dies in that movie, but Superman goes back in time, turns the world around on its axis and, turns back time. Now, I think if that happened in a movie today, that film would have been shut on from a great height because it doesn't really make much sense, does it? When he goes back in time, wouldn't have all the tragedies be ready to be stopped again? Or did he stop them off screen afterwards? I never got that. I love the movie. It's the first movie I ever saw. It's the reason I love Superman. It's an amazing movie. I love it. But I think if you're looking for a plot hole, that's the plot hole. And I think people today wouldn't have tolerated that plot hole, by the way. But what if James Gunn is planning on killing off Lois Lane in this movie? It's very, very interesting because two of the things that his Superman movie are inspired by are All-Star Superman and Kingdom Come. Now, is it Kingdom Come where Lois Lane is dead? Or is it Injustice? I can't remember. Isn't it in Injustice she died, didn't she? And Superman goes bad because she died. It's interesting anyway. So yeah, what if it isn't Superman that dies at the end of this movie, but it's actually Lois Lane? I think the fact that James Gunn is hiding what this movie is truly about tells you everything. I mean, we kind of know little things that it's going to be about. We know that cloning is going to come into this and that Lex Luthor's cloning. And I've said before, the reason we saw pictures of him having cuts on his bald head wasn't because he was shaving his head and he cut himself. I think he's taking pieces of his head to create clones. And one of those clones, I think, is going to be Connor Kent. As I say, there's a lot about this movie we don't know. There's a lot that intrigued me about James Gunn because, as I said before, people do kind of misinterpret him as a dumbed down creative, as someone who just wants smileys and, bright colours and gags. And there are gags in his films. Some of them land and some of them don't, like all gags. Even if you watch Friends, one of the most popular sitcoms of all time, there's gags that are just not fucking funny and there's gags that are hilarious. I think, just talking about Friends for a minute, I think when they go for the international humour, for the kind of sarcastic stuff, it works more than the American cringe kind of humour. I've never found the American sense of humour that funny because it's very, very dry. I appreciate British humour, which is very cruel and, hard. It's hard-hitting in a way. It's mean. The mean humour, the New Statesman, Alan Bastard humour. I love that. Anyway, let's go back to talking about this. So what if Lois Lane dies at the end of this movie? And what does that mean? I mean, at the back of my head, I think my Superman theory of him getting killed off makes more sense than Lois dying, especially with the inspiration of All-Star Superman. Now, James has taken time to say, look, I'm not copying that movie. I'm not adapting that movie. I'm taking pieces from it. And it's pretty clear when we saw that poster, Superman is ill. That when he's sitting there putting his boots on. People misunderstood that picture. It wasn't a kind of a first look of him in his costume. That's not what James was trying to do. It was the first look of him in the costume. And I suppose in a marketing sense, it probably wasn't the best way to go at it. But actually, that picture is full of hints. That's James Gunn giving you a hint. What's going on? The threat outside that window. The fact that Superman looks very, very ill, but he's still putting his boots on, right? That was the whole idea of that section. Some people got it, and some people didn't get it. The people who want to hate on James Gunn's Superman were finding negative elements. I think the costume looks better on him there when he's sitting down than it does standing up. But you've got to remember, that sitting down picture has been planned. It's been taken. The suit's probably been adjusted. When you're seeing him on location, the suit hasn't been adjusted, or it purposely looks like that and baggy on him and stuff because he's losing weight and he's dying. So yeah, but yeah, I think there's a part of me that thinks maybe Lois Lane may be killed off at the end of this movie. And what does that mean? Well, maybe James Gunn is trying to create... Now, this is another angle as well. Clearly, he has a vision for Wonder Woman, or he wouldn't be doing Paradise Lost. So clearly, Paradise Lost is a prequel to Wonder Woman in the DC universe, in the DCU. So I think we will have a Wonder Woman. He's hinted, he's shown pictures of her. He was celebrating her birthday, whatever he was doing the other day. I think we're definitely going to have a Wonder Woman in DCU, and it ain't going to be Gal Gadot. But what if James Gunn is preparing the love affair between Wonder Woman and Superman? What if he's actually building that up? That would be that would be a very interesting aesthetic. Because I've always wanted to see that in live action. I prefer Superman and Wonder Woman being together than Batman and Wonder Woman. A lot of people, in the DCEU, there was a lot of hints about Wonder Woman and Batman. But to me, when Superman comes back to life in the Snyder Cut, you do see that Wonder Woman is kind of a little bit besotted with him. Kal-El, the woman's fucking in love, mate. Didn't you guys notice that? Who says it like that? Kal-El. It's like she's having an orgasm while she's saying it. But anyway, maybe that was just Gal. Anyway, we won't get... Sorry, Gal. It was just a joke. Anyway, so... Yeah, it would be interesting if Lois Lane is killed off. It'd be very controversial. Maybe Lois Lane being killed off in James Gunn's Superman would be more controversial than Superman himself being killed off. It's interesting. I think Connor Kent is a thing. I think Connor Kent is definitely happening in that movie. Because the cloning's going to be there. If you're going to do cloning in a movie, you may as well introduce Connor Kent. This was the mistake Bryan Singer made in Superman Returns, because he's not a comic book fan, right? He probably didn't even know who Connor Kent was. Instead of having Jason, right, they could have called him Connor, right? In Superman Returns, this is Connor. This is my son Clark. Clark at the time doesn't know. But then, what happens? How did Richard and Lois get that kid? Well, you could have revealed that Lois didn't give birth to him, that she actually adopted him via an agency kind of owned by Lex Luthor. And actually, he's Connor Kent. and that's why he's got powers, or something like that. I thought that was a huge mistake. Instead of going down the Jason Avenue, you've given Superman a son. Why can't it be, a son that has the DNA of Lex Luthor and Clark Kent? That would have been interesting. Now, I swear to you, if he wasn't called Jason and he was called Connor in that movie would have made a lot more damn money. And this is the problem. Singer's a great director, despite, what a bad person it seems he is. Great director. That movie's got some great, wonderful moments in it. But because he doesn't know the comics so well, he made a huge mistake. But James Gunn knows the comics, and I think that's what's interesting about this situation. When you know the comics, you can do certain things. And I think Connor Kent, we've seen him in live action, haven't we? In Smallville, briefly, and in Titans. And I think, this is a great opportunity. Because when you've got someone who appreciates comics, he can bring the comics to life. I mean, Zack Snyder loves certain comics, the darker comics, the Dark Knight Returns comics, where James Gunn is kind of more Golden Age, which is interesting. Because as I've said before, James Gunn can only be James Gunn, and Zack Snyder, can only be Zack Snyder. I think you should forgive directors and say they're just being themselves. They're making a movie that they know, that they want to make. That's what art's all about. But they're not making fan fiction, they're making stuff for audiences to consume. So you've got to do what you think is right, but it's very, very complicated making stuff for the public. You've got to go with what means something to you, but also you've got to make something that we're going to consume and we're going to enjoy. It's not necessarily about what we want or what we ask for. It's about putting something on the screen that, I never asked for Quantum Leap. I never asked for a guy time traveling and leaping into other people's bodies, right? But I loved it. I never asked for a teenager to travel around in a DeLorean that's a time traveling machine. But I loved it. I never asked for fucking E.T. But it was great. We don't have to get what we ask for. You don't have to, I didn't ask for The Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. I can't believe they're rebooting that movie. The director's good, so we'll see. But yeah, too many relaunches and reboots. I'm tired and very cynical. And I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think it could be a situation. I don't know the Golden Age comics so well. In the Golden Age, comment down below or tag me on Twitter, because sometimes I don't always see the comments on here. If I'm busy, I do check the comments out. Don't get it twisted, but sometimes I'm too busy. Someone tag me on Twitter, which is where I'm on the most out of social media platforms, at Movies TV Mad. In the Golden Age, is there any hints to a Wonder Woman Kal-El relationship? Do they have a relationship? Let me know the Golden Age, because I don't know it. I really don't know. The Golden Age DC Comics is the one I don't really know. I know more of the Silver Age and the other eras of DC Comics, the New 52, which is around my time really. So let me know in the Golden Age. Do Wonder Woman and Superman get it on? Because I think there could be a thing here where he does kill off Lois Lane, and in the end it's Superman and Wonder Woman who have the relationship. So the next question I suppose you're asking, is Wonder Woman going to be in this Superman movie? I think there's a chance. I mean, James has probably already denied it, but I think there's a chance that we'll see a little bit of Diana in this movie. There has to be. Now, he's been very quiet about Wonder Woman. They've kept that one under wraps. So I think, look, one thing about this Superman movie, it's going to have a lot of surprises. I think it's a longish movie as well. And I think normally James Gunn movies are around 2 hours, just over 2 hours. I think this one may be slightly longer. And to clear something up, I think that James Gunn had to write and direct the first DCU movie. That he had to introduce us to Creature Commandos and his Suicide Squad vision continuing. Because that's what he started in the DCEU, but he wants to bring it over to DCU. And I said yesterday, that's not a big deal. People say everything's about James Gunn. Yes, it's about James Gunn. He's the creative lead. What do you fucking expect? You know, when Scorsese makes a film, it's about Scorsese. And what he understands about the world and what means something to him. Do you understand? So this, you know, and when we were watching the Snyderverse, it was about Zack Snyder and what he loved and what he appreciates about the DC universe. It ain't a big deal. Don't get it twisted. As you all know, I'm very balanced. I don't hate James Gunn. I don't know James Gunn. I think to hate someone, you should at least know them. James has never done anything to me personally. He's always been very polite to me on social media, as I've already said. The CPMs he's made, I've enjoyed. I don't appreciate the fact that him and Saffron cancelled Superman and Lois, so I called him out for that. It's not hate. I'm angry about that, so I had to call him out constructively about that. And I know that James appreciates fan opinion, and it's just my opinion. And there's no denying that Peter and James were behind the cancellation of Superman and Lois at the end of the day. So don't get it twisted there either. But yes, I would love a Superman Wonder Woman romance. I think that would be amazing. And look, I love Lois Lane and I love Rachel Brosnahan. I think she's a great actor. And I'm not saying she has to die, but I think if she gets killed off, or maybe she doesn't get killed off, maybe she's not the love interest in this film. And it's actually Wonder Woman. Imagine that, a love story between Superman and Wonder Woman in this Superman movie. I'm not saying it's going to happen, probably unlikely, but I would love James Gunn for that. That would be very different and that would be very interesting. What if Lois Lane isn't the love interest? Have we seen any pictures of them up close together being a couple? It's very, very interesting. James Gunn may be tricking everyone, and it would be a controversial thing to have Lois Lane there, but for her not to be a fan of his, and be a friend of Clark's, be an admirer of Superman's, but not be his love interest and have it be Diana. So look, we know this is going to be a living, breathing DC universe. I like that idea, and I've always liked that idea. So part of me is like, don't you have confidence in Superman? You're going to have all these characters in. But another side of me thinks it's cool. A living, breathing DC universe in the first movie means that you don't have to make individual movies and build it up slowly like the MCU did. They had time to do it because they were the first of their kind, if you like. People were giving them time. Even though a lot of Marvel fans hated what Feige was doing at the beginning, hated Captain America, the First Avenger. I think that's a brilliant film, by the way. But I think, having a living, breathing DC universe, and I think there's going to be more DC characters in there. And I think it's very interesting. I think when we look at Hawkman, when we look at Guy Gardner, they could be kind of their own hero team that are not doing things in a genuine way. I think Boba Talks was discussing this the other day. It's kind of a reverse Kingdom Come. And Superman shows a more compassionate way of being a hero. I think we're going to see that. Gunn's already said in a mini synopsis that this is a film where kindness, isn't a thing people appreciate in today's world, and Superman's kind. So I think we're going to see that as well. So I think Gunn is going to give us a deep movie, but a different depth to what Zack Snyder gave us. And I think a lot of people out there are going to be surprised because they think they're just going to have a bright, colourful, cringy grin, kind of cringy comedy movie. And I think Gunn's movies do have depth, but different type of depth. And I think it's always about friendship. It's always about finding friendship in the strangest of places, but also his love of animals and creatures and things like that is also very interesting. A little bit like George Lucas. That's why Chewie was Han Solo's best friend, because Chewbacca was inspired by George's dog, Indiana. So it's very similar there, isn't it, in a lot of ways with, Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy and all of that. So I think anyone who thinks it's going to get a standard, generic Superman movie couldn't be more wrong. Yes, Krypto's going to be in there. So there's going to be, I suppose, if you like, Krypto is Superman's and Clark's Chewbacca, in a way. Talk about George Lucas and James Gunn's love for animals. So I think we are going to get a very different type of Superman movie. But one of the things as being a Superman fan is when people adapt it, I want to see different adaptations. Donna's adaptation was beautiful and in a lot of ways comic book accurate, and different ways, in other ways not comic book accurate. And then you've got the Lois and Clark show starring Dean Cain and Terry Hatcher. Very different. Then you've got Smallville, the pre-Superman story. Then you've got Lois and Clark. And then remembering the Superboy show as well, which was very different. Superman Returns, even though it was a continuation of the Donnerverse, very, very different to what we've seen before. Then Man of Steel, BVS, the Snyder Cut, extremely different. And I think one of the things that I always remember from Man of Steel is Jonathan Kent telling Clark that people hate what they don't understand. And that's why the Snyderverse gets so much hate, why Joker Follendoi gets so much hate, and why Feige rejected what Mahershala Ali wanted to do with Blade, because people hate what they don't understand.